Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Masked Monologues. Today, I have with me Alex Coma. He is an artist. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm a visual artist. I studied actually photography in a fine art school and moved to painting and installation work. I did sculpture in the past. I've done video, all sorts of medias, but the idea is to, with my art, create a spiritual space, almost like a mystical space for people to come inside and experience something that I'm depending on the project that I'm trying to express. My latest project is my business, that which is just 1 year old, and it's called Umbra, and it's about healing the world through creation. So we have similar topics in our ideas of what we're doing with our projects, and yeah, the idea is to work with visionary artists and give them tools to access their subconscious mind and to program their art with symbolism, whether it is writing or painting or whatever. So I do that.
I love that mission. I'm just wondering, you said you started off as a photographer and then you experimented with sculpture, art, and now you're an entrepreneur starting your own business. Can you tell me why you decided to dabble in so many mediums and how you transitioned from photography into art?
Yeah, photography, like in this sense, it was in fine art school, so we did use large format cameras, medium format cameras. But for me, it always has felt a bit too limiting because always felt like I had to. I was very imaginative. I have a very deep sense of creativity, and for me to have to rely on reality to create something, like photography is almost a science. Like you're using a technology to take a snapshot of reality for one half a second or less, and that was a bit limiting for me. So as soon as I did an elective in painting in art school, I knew that this medium was a lot more aligned with my vision, because then I could just imagine something, feel something, and express it on canvas without having to rely on like a real space. And so that
Yes.
was for me the transition.
And with art, I'm wondering, did you do more abstract art? Was it more literal? Was it a combination of the two? Because I'm just thinking of having that photography experience. You'd be able to see objects from a different angles, from a different perspective, and that would help you to draw the picture because you'd be able to say, oh, this is where the light is hitting the object. And I'm wondering if that helped or if that was a transferable skill into painting.
Yeah, like what you meant, it's quite accurate what you're saying. I feel like what links both mediums is light. So photography in a sense is like the study of light, how light hits objects, shadows, hues, and like observing light. But honestly, like painting is for me was another level, because you really need to understand. It's not just understanding the camera, how to set your camera with the ISO, with the aperture, etc. With painting, you need to, if you want to recreate something realistically, you need to understand the world of illusion. So like the art of perception. And when I say that, there is some subtle cues that make what we see look real and look 3D, but it's not only an illusion. And so in painting, if you don't understand this illusion, your painting will not look quite like reality. And to give you an example, when there is a shadow that meets a highlight, the small, tiny, invisible line that connects the shadow and the light is the place in the shadow that is the darkest on the side of the shadow, and on the light side, it's the most bright light is right on the edge. And knowing this just makes everything pop. So for me, if you see my paintings, if you see them on Instagram, some people think they're photos, because I do sometimes 4 feet by 6 feet paintings and highly detailed. And when they're condensed to like an iPhone size, they look like an image. It is an accurate observation to say that this skill has translated into my paintings.
Yes, and you even spoke about the techniques that you'd have to use to get that accurate of a depiction from your photographs or from what in life and just transfer that, create that in your paintings. How did you go about acquiring these techniques, these skills? Because you said you did a course in the beginning with painting? How long did you pursue that course for? Was it a year? Was it 2 years? How long would it take someone to gain that level of skill that you're at now?
I guess it depends for everyone. I think I have in art since I'm young, I just learned art very quickly. Like I started painting in my last year of university, just an elective that was like 3 months long. And in the course of this, I learned a few techniques, but university, honestly, they don't teach you much technique. So
Mhm,
when I graduated in photography, I decided to do a fine art school, and that's really fine art academy for drawing and painting, and spent 2 years at part time, like one class per week, where I
mhm,
would spend 2 hours just drawing live objects and learning how to perceive light. I did that for 2 years on and off. And yeah, I think anyone can do it. Like you just need to understand how reality works.
mm,
And they teach this in the fine art academies.
yeah.
Anyone, I think, would teach you the basics of that.
And I'm wondering if you have to have a natural aptitude or a skill for drawing, because I'm the type of person who my drawings look like stick figures. I cannot get to the point where they look like actual people, but I do have very talented friends, very talented family members, and it's almost like they started out that way. And I'm wondering if it's a myth, if it just takes practice, or if people are more naturally skilled than others.
Of course, like in every skill, like there is some people that are just born with gifts and other people that have to work hard to acquire those gifts and will never be at the same level. And again, I think is the art of perception. I think if you're able to perceive details, to be focused, to be in the present moment, it's very interconnected with meditation and with being just conscious of of everything around you as much as possible. Then you will pick up the bouncing of the light on objects very much quicker.
Yes.
And then the other aspect of painting is not just the light, but it's also mixing colors. And this is can be very intuitive. For me, it was quite intuitive. And over time, then I saw my limits, because before I went in this academy, I spent a year just painting with no courses, like I had no background. And the skill I was missing is mainly like when you paint just straight off the tube without knowing how to desaturate a color, your painting looks nice, but again, the colors are not realistic.
Yes.
Like desaturating a green is not by putting white necessarily. You have to
Mhm.
put browns and there's different techniques to desaturate by using the opposite color. And this is just techniques that I learned after. So I think anyone can learn it, but perhaps some will need more patience than others.
Yes. And you talk about patience there. I know patience would be a huge component in becoming a better artist. And because I'm wondering, how long does it usually take you to do a painting? Because from what I know from artists that I've been encountered or that I've encountered before, it takes about 4, 5, 6 hours, even weeks for weeks on end to create a final product. About how long does it take you and how long should people expect a painting to take?
Again, like I don't think there's a recipe. Like the art is an expression of your soul. Like in the sense, like some people, they will paint more abstract, and they start with an underpainting, an undercolor, which takes 2 minutes to put on, and then they
Mhm.
just splash paint on there, and it'll take them minutes. So there's so many different techniques, different mediums, different drying times. So you cannot, and then that's just like the application part. Like from the background I have, it's in conceptual art. So conceptualizing a piece of art is like doing a research paper. Like it takes time. If you want something that's meaningful, that is impact and that is conceptual. So all around your concept might be on the top of your mind, and you don't need to think too far. And then you just do abstract, and in a few hours you're done. For my part, most of my most successful paintings, in my opinion, are the ones that take me between 2 months to 6 months to produce. Like they are intricately connected with my spiritual life, and
Mhm.
they gain momentum as my life evolves. And therefore, because I paint oil, I take my time building and layering the painting, like one layer at a time, and it takes long.
I'm wondering, do you ever get frustrated while doing a painting, or is it more therapeutic for you?
No, like I think frustration, like anything you create becomes a medium for introspection. That's my approach to to creativity. So if you're frustrated, like you should ask yourself and take time to reflect what is making you frustrated, because it's probably something within that is stuck. Like for me, creation becomes a mirror for introspection. So whatever you create is teaching you something. So frustration is part of it, but ask yourself why. In my case, what I'm motivates me, like some people, there's different reasons why we create. For me, it's very passionate. There's a lot of fire involved. It's more like I get excited when I start a painting, and of course sometimes when I'm rendering a part of the painting that's very repetitive, for example painting grass, like it's always the same movement, this can be annoying. It's in the scale of things, I really enjoy taking my time, putting incense and kind of having my bubble. It becomes a kind of a ritual in many ways.
And now I want to touch on your business. You said that you started that up in the past year. Can you tell me why you decided to start a business? Is it related to your art? Can you tell us a bit more about how you started and how you got into that?
Yeah, Rose Umbra for me, like I told you, I see anything you create, that I come from that premise is like everything you create is divine, is a divine act. And so depending, like an artwork is a creation, but every decision that you take in a day becomes some sort of, it creates something. And when you look back on your deathbed and you look at your life, it's going to be an artwork. Like all those micro decisions will have created something bigger. And so that's how I see creation. And so for me, my business becomes giving artists and visionary artists and creators tools to understand their art in this way, to help them understand how there is something very spiritual underlying every creation. And it can have, depending on your level of success, you can have a big reach. Like your art can impact a lot of people, not just consciously, but subconsciously as well. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And I like to help people do that. I also work with musicians to make like album covers, so translating their music into image using symbolism and to convey subconscious messages and stuff like that. I'm very passionate about that. So my business is a blend of all this. So I do one-on-one counseling where we work with astrology, with tarot, with their art portfolio to help them understand the subconscious motivations of them doing their art. There's also the podcast. I have my podcast called Blue Hour Podcast, where I interview visionary artists and creators that are already doing that to showcase them and their work and inspire other artists to become like that. Then the last component are retreats. So the next one is at the end of the month, in the 30th of June. And it's anyone that desires to understand their creativity on a more deep level. So whether you're an aspiring artist or you just want more meaning in your life, it's a 7-day retreat that focuses on the astrological event that's in the sky right now, which is Mars in Pisces. So Mars is the fire planet of will, the willpower, and it's linked with creativity as well. So we will be focusing on that over 7 days in Spain. So there's these three aspects to Rose Umbra. And it's been a year and it keeps developing with time. But for now, these are the three major components of the business.
Sorry, I'm just wondering, can you tell me the difference between a business mindset and your creative mindset? Because I know when it comes to business, there's more specifics that you have to dabble into. It could be marketing, it could be maybe it's just connecting with customers, maybe it's doing programs, setting up courses, doing those retreats. Can you tell me how you handle that aspect of your creativity, the business, as well as the paintings and just connecting with musicians for doing cover artwork or all the clients you work with, how you manage both of those things?
Yeah, I think I don't have a very typical path. Like my path is a very intuitive one. And it's not always been this way, but I intentionally decided a few years ago to sell everything I owned, to be very versatile and be able to travel the world and just follow my intuition where it's guiding me. And I run my business in the same way as my art. Like now I have an art agent. So she helps me to ask for grants, to apply to galleries and all administrative things related to an art business. And I paint when I can. So when I have a bit more stability, since I'm traveling the world, I paint, and sometimes I just have to ship it back to Canada where I store my art. And the business is the same thing. I'm working on it almost every day. The podcast being part of the business, like it's Blue Hour Podcast by Umbra. And I find my guests very also authentically. For example, now I'm in Paris, and last week I was going perfume shopping, and I saw this perfume store called Spiritus. And I was very curious to understand what it was about because of the wording. And when
Yes.
I went there, I got to speak with the owner, and ends out that he is in the spiritual world, and it is his calling to create these symbolic perfumes that are connected to everyone's life path, which is connected with numerology. So I met him, and it was I knew that he had to be on my podcast. So next week I'm going to Paris to film the podcast with him, and it's just going to create a nice conversation and a nice, inspiring conversation. So this is how like I go about it to merge the three worlds. I have always been interested in business as well. Like in university, I took 1/3 of my electives in business because I'm just fascinated by it and I love learning about it. I have a few tools from there, and the rest is pretty intuitive.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love how you also took an interest in business because a lot of creatives overlook that, I find, the entire business aspect of marketing their work, of getting it out there, getting it seen. And so it's wonderful that you took initiative and you did some business courses and you also connected with other business owners. Is there any place where people can find your podcast, find your social media platforms, your business? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, the place to find most of it is .com. There you have links to the podcast, which is the Blue Hour Podcast by Rosenbra on YouTube, Spotify. And my personal account on Instagram is also, it's alexcoma.world, but for the Rosenbra, it's just Rosenbra. You can find it on Instagram. And yeah, so my website is the same as my Instagram. So it's coma.world is the website. This is for my artworks. And yeah, for the upcoming retreat as well is on my website. If you want to take a look at the schedule and the pricing and all of that, it's all on there.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure our listeners appreciate your advice and just discussing your artwork. Thank you so much. And if you listeners like this podcast episode and you want more episodes like this, then please do share it with a friend or family member, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, and thanks for having me.